Right now at noon, grim new details on the catastrophic condo collapse in Surfside.
We can tragically report the death count is now 4.
The death toll rising as the search for survivors enters day 2. Nearly 160 people now unaccounted for.
Dozens of families wait for word on their loved ones, questions mounting about the background of the building.
Our coverage of the condo collapse continues right now.
We are listening for sound.
We do have 120 people now accounted for, which is very, very good news. But our unaccounted for number has gone up to 159.
We begin with the grim update out of Surfside. Miami-Dade Mayor Daniella Levine Cava confirming 3 bodies were pulled from the rubble overnight, bringing the death toll to 4.
It's a very, very difficult situation. Obviously, you have people that have been displaced who fortunately got out of there in time. And so there's support services for them. But then you have a lot of family members who don't know where their loved ones are. So it's been a really, really difficult time.
Governor Ron DeSantis speaking on the disaster this morning. You're looking live at the scene from Sky 10. This is a wide picture of the destruction when half of the building came tumbling down on Thursday morning.
And earlier in the hour, we saw crews sifting through that debris. Less than 24 hours later, the number of people still missing growing overnight to 159.
Our coverage continues right now at noon. Local 10's Glenna Milberg leads us off with the latest out of Surfside.
And the latest, JC, is news that no one really wants to hear. The medical examiner has now made positive identification of 3 of the 4 people that are officially being confirmed as deceased. We are not going to share those IDs, obviously. Next of kin is now being noticed, and Miami-Dade homicide detectives are actually assisting in that effort. I can tell you, though, we have learned that one of those that has been identified was actually living after the collapse, was one of the people pulled from the rubble and taken to the hospital, but did not make it. That said, the round-the-clock work here is continuing at the condominium. You'll notice many more machines, big excavator brought in, more machinery continue to be brought in, and what they're focusing on today are the sounds that they're hearing, and very clearly that doesn't mean they're hearing sounds of humans that are alive, just sounds that they are turning their attention to with all the equipment and man and woman power that they have here. More machinery, more crew power, and the single focus, the mangled mountain of people's lives.
To start pulling some of the superficial metal from above as we start looking for additional voids from above.
The voids, a possible path to survival, but rescue crews doubt this pancaked levels hold many of those. They made their first recoveries overnight, heartbreaking finds of 3 residents. And now with sonar and dogs, concrete saws, and now the assist of federal FEMA money and resources, also state emergency management coordinating incoming crew help.
There's a total of 8 teams throughout the state, so that's an additional 6 teams have been put on standby to rotate in as needed at the request of Miami-Dade Fire Rescue.
We have structural engineers on site to assure that they will not be injured.
These urban search and rescue teams, supplemented now by all of those state teams that are available, these are all going to be firefighter professionals who are trained in doing the work that they're doing here. I will say, standing here, we are literally a block from the scene. The air that you really, it's hard to convey the air and how harsh it is and the stench in the air. A block away, we are smelling that and inhaling that, and that only serves to show what the rescue crews right there on that pile of rubble, one of the many things that they are dealing with. Their round-the-clock work continues, and they are very mindful as it does that the clock is not their ally, and that every moment that goes by, any possible survivors in that pile, it does not look good. I'm Glenna Milberg, live in Surfside, Local 10 News.
Glenna, in addition to the smoke that you were just mentioning, weather was a concern earlier in the day as well, with wind, with rain. But something else that so many of our crews have been reporting on since yesterday when this first started was the noise, the sheer amount of crews, of helicopters in the air. What can you tell us about that from where you are right now? Is it very noisy? Is that a concern for anyone moving forward?
It is noisy. I think the people most concerned with that noise are probably the residents of Surfside. Surfside, if anyone has not been here, it's a very small community. It's very much a bedroom community, not a lot of commerce, families, young families, and they're just not used to having machinery and crews and hundreds, possibly thousands of people right there in their concentrated little streets. A lot of the streets are one way, a lot of them are blocked off. So it is just a new day in this community while this work goes on. As far as the noise being an issue to the actual rescue operation, that I have not heard from the rescue teams and the personnel that we talk to. Their work on the rubble, listening for noise from within the rubble. What they use are devices, specialized devices. They're also using sonar to listen for the kinds of noise that they want to focus on. So that would be, I know yesterday we were reporting, you may have heard, on a tapping noise. They kind of walk back that description. They don't want clearly to give anybody any false hope that they may be finding somebody alive. Tapping noise could be a dripping of water on steel. It could be steel shifting. But there are those little noises that they're looking for with their equipment and zeroing in on at the moment. That's their focus at the moment, is what they told us earlier. But as far as disruptive noises, that I think is going to be very much of a concern to, unfortunately, for the residents of Surfside, who I should also say, many of whom have been out here with food and water for the rescue crews, being very supportive, and this, our community in times of disaster comes together, it just does, and so we've been seeing more of that than anything else.
All right, Glenna, thank you. We are zoomed in again to the workers at the scene. They are moving that rubble. It's a very slow process. You can see there's more than a dozen of them, possibly 24, just slowly. The efforts are just very delicate and very painstaking. And you can see they're there with their buckets. They're passing it on to each other. It just shows you how long everything must take in this process.
And delicate is a good word to use, because you have to be delicate when approaching these situations, because as we've been mentioning since yesterday, integrity, structural integrity, is important in this. You can't risk anything collapsing even further. And then keep in mind that, as experts have described to us before, it's pancaked when it collapsed. So there are layers on layers of debris that we're keeping an eye on. The damage from that collapse is extensive. You see the crews there working nonstop to find any survivors in that rubble. And because of those operations, people who have been rescued or who live in the area are being kept away from that site right now.
And as we've seen, the damage from the collapse is so extensive. Search and rescue crews, they have not stopped working. When we talk about this, we're talking about since Thursday at 2 a.m. And there are so many crews that we can't see. So this is just what we can zoom into. But when you think about the tunneling, the heavy machinery, they had to use that to make sure that there's no disruption, not only in the rubble, but in the integrity of the building, since half of it has collapsed and fallen apart. Of course, there's always concern about the rest of the building, engineers out there as well. You don't see the engineers, but they are doing their part. And also from above, from the air, they've been working on this project as well and this recovery effort.